From Srila Prabhupada, Volume 6, 92 Worlds, chapter entitled Chanting Krishna and Fight. Hari Sorry, who had been with Prabhupada continually for 18 months, felt that Prabhupada's health was not likely to improve, and in one sense, the Krishna conscious movement was spreading so widely under Prabhupada's direction that it was perhaps not so necessary for Prabhupada to travel, at least not with the extraordinary expenditure of energy and strength that he had been displaying for the last 10 years. Maybe he could retire from traveling even during the previous summer when he had been traveling in the United States. He had once remarked that he simply wanted to go there to become encouraged by how well his devotees were managing everything by themselves. He used to say that he had laid the foundation and directed the framework for the building of the Krishna consciousness movement. Now his followers simply had to fill it in. He would often say he had injected medicine into the system of material society, now it would spread that out. He also said he had ignited the fire that would now rage around the world. Therefore, although he was always anxious for his movement, he had confidence. One morning, just after breakfast, Prabhupada was on his veranda looking out across the land of Manipur. Turning to Hari Shori, he said, "Actually, it does not matter even if I die immediately. I have given the basis for everything, and now if we simply manage things nicely and follow the program I have begun, then everything will be successful." Hari Shori was disturbed to hear such statements, and he remained speechless. Then Prabhupada added, "But still, I would like to finish this Srimad Bhagavatam." Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
From Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 13. We're going to converses with Jan Bharat, and there's a text, 18 or 19?
19. Katanchit sa vimukta apadam
Katanchit sa vimukta
apadam punash sartam pravishati arindama
Punascha sartam pravishati arindama Advani Amushmin Ajaya Niveshito Advanyumashmin Ajaya Niveshito Brahman Jano Dyapi Na Veda Kashchana Brahman Jano Dyapi Na Veda Kashchana Katanchit sa vimukta apada Punascha sartam pravishati arindama Punascha sartam pravishati arindama Advanyumashmin Ajaya Niveshito Brahmanjano Dyapi Navida Kashchana Katanchit sa vimukta apada Punascha sartam pravishati arindama Advanyamushmin Ajaya Niveshito Brahmanjano Dyapi Navida Kashchana
Katanchit sa vimukta apada Punascha sartam pravishati arindama Advanyamushmin Ajaya Niveshito Brahmanjano Dyapi Naveda Kashchana Atha katanchit sa vimukta apada Punascha sartam pravishati arindama Advanyamusmin Ajaya Niveshito Brahmanjano Dyapi Naveda Kashchana Atha katanchit sa vimukta apada Punascha sartam pravishati arindama Advanyamusmin ajaya viveshito Brahmanjanodyapi naveda kashana.
From this Tanjit somehow Sa he Vimukta liberated Apada from the danger Guna Cha. So again Saratam taking interest in that life Pravishati begins Arindama the king killer of the enemies
leader of the enemies. Advani
on the path of enjoyment
on the path of enjoyment.
and Vishnu that Ajaya by the influence of the illusory energy.
By the influence of the illusory energy.
Viveshita
being absorbed.
Brahman traveling
Jana
conditioned soul
the conditioned soul and Vyapi
even up to death.
Naveda
does not understand
Kashana anything.
Translation Kala Venis Maharaj Ravigna, if the conditioned soul somehow or other gets out of his dangerous position, he again returns to his home to enjoy sex life. For that is the way of attachment. Thus, under the spell of the Lord's spiritual energy, he continues to loiter in the forest of material existence. He does not discover his real interest even at the point of death. Please repeat, O killer of enemies,
Maharaj Ravigna.
if the conditioned soul somehow or other
If the conditioned soul somehow or other
gets out of his dangerous position,
he
again returns to his home to enjoy sex life.
He again returns to his home to enjoy sex life.
For that is the way of attachment.
For that is the way of attachment.
Thus, under the spell of the Lord's material energy, he continues to loiter in the forest of material existence.
He continues to loiter in the forest of material existence.
He does not discover his real interest.
He does not discover his real interest.
Even at the point of death.
Even at the point of death.
This is the way of material life. When one is captured by sexual attraction, he becomes implicated in so many ways and cannot understand the real aim of life. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam 7.5.31 says, Nati Vidu Sartakatim Ki Vishnu. Generally, people do not understand the ultimate goal of life. As stated in the Vedas, Om Thai Vishnu Paramam Padam Sada Pashanti Shuraya. Those who are spiritually advanced simply look to the lotus feet of Vishnu. The conditioned soul, however, not being interested in reviving his relationship with Vishnu, becomes captivated by material activities and remains in everlasting bondage, being misled by so-called leaders. Mukam Proti Vatilam, Hanavati, Tripadam, Vande, Shubhinam, Shri Krishna Chaitanya, Pradhananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar, Shri Vasavabhaktivinoda, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Killer of enemies Maharaj, including the conditioned soul, somehow or other gets out of his dangerous position, he again returns to his home to enjoy sex life. For that is the way of attachment. Thus, under the spell of the Lord's material energy, he continues to loiter in the forest of material existence. He does not discover his real interest even at the point of death. The situation is that once living entity gets out of dangerous position, this dangerous position, we find ourselves in. Sometimes we don't even see the danger of it, and then we suffer because of the the danger we put ourselves in, padam, step after step, there is danger in this material world. So the danger of death is one thing. I remember as a kid, I was still in primary school and I was wondering what would it be when I grew up. So I went through the usual things like the fireman, the policeman, soldier, this and that, or the next thing. And each one I went through, I was thinking, yeah, but that one's got quite a risk. Maybe you could get, if you're a window cleaner, you could fall off the ladder. If you're a fireman, you could burn on fire. If you're a policeman, you could get killed by a criminal. So everything, I was just realising that actually there was no safe job. And then I began to realise actually there's no safe anything in this world. Anytime, anything can happen, doesn't matter what age you are. Anything can happen and get away. Of course, when you're young, you don't see death so much, maybe grandparents, something like that. And occasionally, some kids unfortunately lose a mother or father. But generally it's considered that young children are protected quite a bit from death. Then went to high school and we were in, it was history class, geography class. And the teacher we had, he was a nice man, but he was a bit soft, so people used to take a rise out of him. They'd throw around in class a lot, and they used to wind him up quite a bit. He didn't deserve it actually, the poor guy. And because he was quite soft-hearted, then the kids are very cruel. They're always trying to test the boundaries. How far can we go? And they went quite far with this guy. But then one day he got it back. He says, "Oh, you guys have enjoyed just now." He says, "And you think that this is going to go on forever?" He says, "But by the age of 30, and then he quoted some statistics. He said at least 2 of you in this class will be dead." And then everybody was quiet, realising, started looking at each other, who would it be? And it got me thinking. So then by the age of, and then he says, and after that, by the age of 40, we'll be dead. And by the time you get to my age, then it'll be at least a set percentage you won't even get this far. So everyone became a little bit quiet at that point, a bit thoughtful. Not for long, but at least you did get them to think. And in fact, looking back, I remember some of the people in that class, and I heard that some of them had passed away. And that's, I've lost track with many of them as well, but just over some years you hear of some people, what to speak of ones you don't hear of. So as the herd is thinning out, and everyone's still thinking, I'm different, I'm going to be okay, I'm not going to die, or I won't die yet, I have too many plans. And Prabhupada says that death comes along and takes away the great plan maker. And even if you're a plan maker for Krishna, it doesn't mean to say that your time is not going to be up. It's not that, okay, I'm doing this for Krishna, so I'll be okay until I'm 70 or 80. If your time's up, it's up. So we better be ready for calling on Krishna at any time, not putting it off till another 10 years, thinking I've got another 10 years left in me. We don't know, do we? Sometimes people, they go to the doctor and they get some bad news and they realise, oh, you've only got a few months or maybe a year to go. It happens. It doesn't matter what age you are. So the plan to make really is to plan to improve on our Krishna consciousness, to become attentive hearers of the holy name, make sure we chant at least all our 16 rounds and do our best to make them attentive and keep on trying to improve on that. And hearing Srimad Bhagavatam regularly, this is the way to invoke great fortune upon ourselves. When we talk about fortune, we don't mean material fortune, because what is material fortune? It's just another binding to, and it's another way of binding us to the material world. Which means even if you come back simply to enjoy the results, you're still having to go through birth, death, old age, and disease. And Srila Prabhupada refers to the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada talks about as Martya Loka or Mrityu Loka, the world of birth and death. So the spiritual world is not the world of birth and death, it's the world of eternal life. And that's where we want to head to. And therefore it's very important that we are careful not to spoil our devotional service, because we've come across a great fortune in this treasure of Krishna consciousness. And we should keep in mind the principles which are favourable for advancing devotional service, and be mindful to avoid getting into things which are going to spoil the devotional service. Sometimes there's this thing called finding our level. So it means we're not seeing the danger of this material world. Step after step there's danger, but we're trying to find a level. So we're trying to find a comfortable level between spiritual and material life. Which means that we're not actually endeavouring to take shelter of Krishna, and we won't be prepared for taking shelter of Krishna fully at the time of death, and then we will be regretful. So better that we don't have any regrets at the end of this life. And whatever's important to us in this life, it'll be gone as soon as life's over, and we'll be thinking the thing which was really important, I missed out on that, if we focus on these things too much. But for a devotee, they focus what is really important, and then they do their best in Krishna's service. We do our best to live life as a devotee, and follow the instructions of Guru Sadhu Shastra. And so this is also mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita by Krishna, that the devotee has to perceive the evils of birth, death, old age and disease. So the evils of it, meaning that basically this is not a happy place to be in. Whatever happiness we might find temporary, it won't last. Because we don't know what's coming, we don't know what reactions, what we may have done in a past life, what may come and spoil that. And whatever happiness we experience, it does run out in due course. So we have to recognise the danger of this. And even when we give up attachments, to go back to them again is called sannyasi. So this means if we take something which is unpalatable, you make it something and then you start to feel sick, and they say the best thing you can do is to throw up. Just like, was it third canto or fourth canto? Daksha. His daughter is Parvati. So she renounced her body on account of it being connected to her father, who was an offender to Lord Shiva. She said that that when one takes something which makes you sick, then the best thing you can do is throw it up, and so to get rid of it out of the body, so it doesn't continue to poison you. So she says, similarly, this body I consider I'm going to renounce it like that. She didn't want to have any association with it. So when we give up something, when we take the devotional service and we see this principle in our ability, unwanted things, and we start to give it up, then once we start to experience some relief from our suffering, then we shouldn't be foolish to go back to it again, because that means that we're once again taking what we gave up. We're taking up with what we'd already given up. So of course it's not easy to get up into your world. We have some bad habits since a long time. Prabhupada refers to it at the end of the purport as the conditioned soul, however, not being interested in reviving his relationship with Krishna, becomes captivated by material activities and remains in everlasting bondage, being misled by so-called leaders. So remains in everlasting bondage. This is called nitya bhava. So it's only everlasting as long as we perpetuate it. So it's perpetual. Nitya bhava means perpetually conditioned, as long as we perpetuate it. But if we stop perpetuating it, then something else happens. The fan stops when we unplug it. It runs for a little bit just due to some momentum, and then it will stop. Sometimes the fan can be quite a distraction. It's a noise, it agitates the air. Although it can be quite cooling at times, but it can be a bit of a distraction, you can't think straight. So this is the effect of karma. It can be a distraction to us. Our mind is always disturbed. But when we unplug the fan and we take the devotional service, in due course of time, the momentum of our karma will slow down and stop, and then simply by engaging in devotional service, beginning with hearing and chanting, then all that will be left is devotional service. And Rupa Goswami explains in the Nectar of Instruction that we have to be patient. It's not that it will happen within a week or two, or a month or two, or even a year or two. It takes great endeavour. That's what it takes. It's not even a matter of time. It's not like, okay, I started this Krishna conscious movement on the 1st of May 1999, and 20 years from now, 2019 or something like that, or whatever it be, yeah, 19, then I should have been Krishna conscious, and I haven't. So therefore the system has got some fault. But we analyse and see, is there a fault in our application? Why are we not experiencing great bliss by chanting? And it can be there, because we see other devotees when they're in kirtan, or when they're chanting japa, they're really relishing it, they're getting a taste. And that to us is a proof. It's a proof, just like, say you get a group of people all suffering from the same disease, and they start on a course of medicine. So the ones who keep the medicine and take it regularly every day, and we see them getting better. We've been taking it off and on, sometimes forgetting it, sometimes half dose, and then double dose, and then half dose, and then nothing for a few days. And we look at ourselves and think, well, I've been taking this, I've been on this for the same length of time as them, but why am I not experiencing this bliss that they're experiencing? Because there's regular devotional service, and fastidious application of it is what's going to bring about the cure for this material disease. And the material disease, Prabhupada refers to it as skin disease, not necessarily that we've got psoriasis or boils or acne or something like that. We might have those, but the skin disease is that we look at the skin, look in the mirror, and we see, what do we see? We see skin which is covering over tissue, fat, organs, veins, arteries, and these are the lovely ingredients in the body. And we're looking at it thinking, oh, yeah, that look too bad today. Is Mr. Handsome smiling back in the mirror again, or Miss Pretty Face, or oh, I wish I was this, or I wish I was that. Put too much emphasis on just what is the skin wrapping over this temporary body. But what is beyond all that? What is beyond this mucus, bile, air, blood, bones, flesh, etc., and the mind, intelligence, and false ego. False ego is identifying with these different things. Sometimes people, they realise they're not maybe such a good looker, so they go for intellectual pursuits, or they go for being, say, the funny guy, right? Not saying there's anything wrong with being funny, you know, it's, humour has its origin in Krishna. So it's not that we have to become stoic and can't enjoy humour. So various things we identify with so many things in the pure world through gross or subtle misidentifications, all while forgetting the real identity, which is what we're really looking for, which is what we're going to be satisfied with. And sometimes people understand that such and such has an identity crisis, but actually we all have an identity crisis. There was one chap from our hometown, and he was quite extreme. When he got into football, then he used to go around with a big flag wrapped around him like a chudder, and he'd go around in all the colours of his football team all the time. And then he got into being a hippie, and he had an Afghan coat, walking around barefoot, and whatever he was doing was just very, very extreme. And just you can see that this chap was really searching to find something that he can identify with. And I didn't hear what became of him, but this is the situation with all of us. Sometimes we just settle for some kind of hunky-dory existence. Oh, this is everything we in moderation, or we become extreme enjoyers, or we want to dress up. Now, whatever we do in the material world, if it's a distraction, then we've got to look at it and say, okay, what's best for my Krishna consciousness? And realize what is an artha, and the process, understand what is the process of nivriti, that we do have to learn to tolerate without being disturbed. This is a very early lesson that Krishna gives us. And he tells us how to, by understanding the temporary nature, like the winter and summer seasons come, just like present we're in summer here in Scotland. And tomorrow will be the longest day, which means the day after that, no, Monday I think is the longest day. So the day after that means the days are getting shorter and shorter. So we're heading back into winter again. So we don't live for this. If you live for this, then you're simply becoming elated and disappointed, elated and disappointed. When we are attached to happiness and distress of the material world, and it's both sides, both different sides of the same coin. It's just still a distraction. But it needn't be a distraction. Whatever situation we find ourselves in, we can always chant. We can chant Hare Krishna. Just like sometimes you may be using public transport and the bus is broken down, it won't be here for another hour, so people get fed up and they might go home, or they might just start grumbling. But the devotee can just start chanting in their mind, or get a book out and start reading and think, oh good, an opportunity to chant a bit, an opportunity to read. So the devotees, they take mishaps of the material world as being an opportunity to be more Krishna conscious. If there's some obstacle there, then devotees think, okay, this is an opportunity for me to depend on Krishna by praying to Krishna, or seeking advice from another devotee, or by just trying to use the best of our knowledge to overcome that difficulty. I remember once I was in Mayapur, and was that South African devotee's name again? He visited here once. Bhima Prasad. So he invited me to take lunch at this Gurukul hut, which was a nice mud hut with a straw roof, and they had this mixture. They had a stove that made of mud, straw, and cow dung, and they'd cooked lunch there. And it was amazing because it was just totally using ingredients of nature, and you could really feel the difference in the quality of the, not just the taste of the meal, but even the level of satisfaction mentally after it. It just seemed so natural. You think, well, why would you want anything else? And Prabhupada did say that for us, we're happy to live in a mud hut, but in order to spread Krishna consciousness, then we utilize so many things in Krishna's service. Otherwise, we can be satisfied chanting Hare Krishna, living in the mud hut, taking some prasad. And I got a little taste that, yeah, that's okay, that is the case. Anyhow, this devotee, he was experiencing some difficulty, and he'd approached Bhima Prasad and he asked her for some advice, and he said, you already know the answer. He said, no, I don't, I'm really confused. He said, you read Bhagavad Gita? Yeah. He said, you just forgot what you already know. So he just pointed him to a few verses. He said, see, you already knew it, you just forgot it. You just forgot how to apply it. So rather than just sorting it out for him, he showed him where he could find the tools to fix what his problem was, and he would be very happy. And not just to be happy that it had been solved, that he could then know what to refer to in the future again. So everything is there in the Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam to help us get out of this material world, but sometimes we just forget to find that shelter. So as devotees, we are still in the material world, we do experience difficulties, but we do have some recourse out of here. The great blessings of Srimad Bhagavatam. Under the spell of material energy, the living entities loitering in the forest of material existence in a dangerous place. It's one of the first things they teach you about martial arts is, anybody know?
To turn your back and move as fast as you can.
Yeah, but actually just before that is to sense danger. So if you're walking down the street and you see coming towards you what looks like it could be some kind of aggressive challenge, they tell you to cross the street, and then if they cross, and cross again. If they cross back, then turn around and run. So it's to recognise the dangerous situations and then run. Because even if you're very good at martial arts, if one person gets the first hit in, then game's over. There was a friend of mine, he was a black belt in Taekwondo, and he met up with a local hardman, not by choice but by chance. He stepped in the town centre, and this local hardman stepped in with him, and it helped him know that this boy was learning martial arts and he was becoming very expert. He says, "So you're a black belt," and this, that, and it, and he says, "So do you want to have a go at me?" And my friend, his name is Kevin Keegan, believe it or not the football player, but Kevin said, "No." He says, "It's okay, you can just say that I chickened out," because he knew that if this boy had hit once, that'd be the end of it, he'd make mincemeat out of him. So he was smart enough to avoid. So this is an intelligent thing to do, not like size a guy up and you think, see if I can get one on quickly. Because he was smart enough to know that if he gets the first hit, then I'm done for. So that is the situation with ourselves as well, is to recognise danger and avoid it. That's the intelligent thing. If we recognise danger and we walk into it, then we deserve everything we get. We will get it. We get what we deserve. And that's unfortunate. I remember Harry Cage giving a lecture. And it's a very difficult lesson for many people to accept because of the horrible things that go on in the material world. He said, actually, there's so much in this world, he says, and people are thinking, oh, the innocent people and suffering like that. He says, actually, in the material world, no one is innocent. He says, if you're in the material world, you're guilty. You've turned your back on Krishna now, we may be innocent in this life, but in the same sentence, then there's someone who's doing something terrible who apparently gets away with it. But in the next life, that person appears to be innocent and they're not getting away with it. Of course, because we think this one life is all in all, and even to say such a thing is such a risk, because there was that famous sportscaster, Glenn Hoddle. Mm-hmm. He was living in Buddhism, and he mentioned something about karma, and he lost his job and his reputation, which was simply it's religious discrimination. Now, of course, there's political correctness involved there, so there's compassion. And Krishna says, don't try to understand the actions of karma, the intricacies of karma, because we cannot fathom it. So we can't just make a blanket statement and say this is because of this or this is because of that. But what we do know is that regardless of where we're at just now, what we may or may not have done, what may or may not have brought us to our situation. And one thing is that we do want to find a way out of this, and therefore the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is the surest means of deliverance in this age of Kali. And it's very simple, just Hare Krishna and Prana. Sometimes we try to chant other mantras and we think we know it, we get halfway through and we think, oh, I forgot it. Anyone ever experienced that? Even at Mangalarti, sometimes we may have done Mangalarti 10,000 times, but we can still get it wrong. Because in Kali Yuga, our memories are short-lived. And as we get older, they get even shorter. An example was Vrinda, Jagat and myself, and maybe another person was sitting in the temple conservatory, discussing and debating and arguing about something, and we finally came to a conclusion. And after a minute, I said, so what was that we decided again? And I couldn't even remember what we were talking about. After, like a debate which went on for like 15 minutes or something like that, none of us could remember even what we were talking about, not to be able to speak of what the conclusion was. We realised, okay, just had to laugh and just, if it's important, it will show up again and So with such memories, how can we really be perfect sadhakas, perfect followers of sadhana? So there's different ways of attaining perfection. So to get in this material world, really we want Yasha Prasada Bhagavad Prasado Yasha Prasada Nagati Topi Janayam Spivans Tasyaya Shasti Sangyam Vande Guru Shicharna Arvindam. By the mercy of the spiritual master, then we get Krishna's mercy. So by Krishna's mercy we get the spiritual master, and by the spiritual master's mercy, he recommends us to Krishna, he vouches for us. He says, this is my disciple, he's trying very hard to serve you in the material world in difficult circumstances, please accept him or her. And without the mercy of the spiritual master we cannot make any advancement. So it's important that we take a direction from the spiritual master, and that also comes from the sadhus and from the shastra. Not that we simply have a spiritual master and don't listen to anyone else, or not that we listen to the sadhus and we don't need the spiritual master, or not that we can just listen and we can just read shastra and we don't need association with devotees and we don't need a spiritual master. The Guru Sadhu and Shastra is there for us all to take shelter of, and we can become fully confident by exposing yourself to the instructions of Guru Sadhu and Shastra. We can become fully confident that this is the path back to Godhead, and that we're heading in that path, and getting the shelter of the spiritual master, as opposed to trying to take shelter of our own limited intelligence or something else material. So of course we do try our best. It's not that we think, well, I'll just take initiation and the spiritual master's mercy, somehow or another he'll deliver me, and I don't really have to try very hard. And we also have to try, so that it's not simply by getting the Guru's mercy. We also have to get Guru Maharaj's mercy by following strictly. It's mentioned that the spiritual master becomes pleased when the devotee follows the regulated principles. We're not just talking about the four regulative principles of 4 vows, but the other principles of Krishna consciousness, which are conducive for making advance, the way we associate with other devotees, non-devotees, senior devotees, junior devotees, devotees on our similar level, the way we apply our Krishna consciousness in terms of accepting what is favourable and rejecting what is unfavourable. So the spiritual master becomes pleased when he sees that, okay, he's learned and now he's applying it. Just like, say, the father, sometimes you see some businesses, father and son, like John Smith and Sons Joiners. So what's happened is that, the senior man, Mr. Smith, he's been a tradesman all his life, and then he brings his son up to also learn how to do that, and he sends him to college, and he comes to work on his holidays at school and things like that, or he just learns the trade, and in this way, when he learns it to the point where he's able to do it without, he's able to utilise all the tools, and he can tackle any job with full confidence because he's learned the trade, then the father becomes happy. He feels, okay, that's good, now I know he's quite safe, he can make a living for himself. So the spiritual master also becomes happy when he sees that we're able to keep ourselves in Krishna consciousness. Just like one spiritual master told me that he said, I don't really want disciples that need constant propping up. And that's his prerogative, that's a wise choice. Because too many unqualified disciples can be a burden on the spiritual master, can cause faltering. So here in this verse, it's mentioned that under the spell of the Lord's material energy, we continue to loiter in the forest of material existence. So it's already been described that this forest of material existence is a dangerous place. So loitering means that we're not really understanding the danger of it. We're just hanging around, trying to enjoy. Even though it's a dangerous situation, then we just try to take our mind off of the danger by some distraction. And then the reality of it, it's just like I was in the car with somebody once, and we almost had a crash, and very, very close, and I chanted Hare Krishna. Thankfully I remembered to chant it at that moment, but the person next to me, they didn't, they just looked really terrified, and I realised that this devotee needs to actually become more practiced in taking shelter of Krishna. It should be automatic, like when there's danger, Hare Krishna, immediately. So even on the small things, we can take shelter in Krishna's holy name. Like we jam our foot in the door, instead of chanting some Scottish Sanskrit mantras or something, then we can chant Hare Krishna. Or when we experience some difficulty, anxious difficulty, family trouble, mental trouble, whatever, take shelter of Krishna's name, take shelter of Krishna's devotees' instructions. And then when the big difficulty comes, then we'll be practicing that, and then it will come automatically. So we'll just close it there. Am I getting any questions or comments?
Yeah, well, one comment was we were talking about following Shastra and following Shiva Maharaj just saying recently in the initiation lecture. He says that as well as the 4 principles and chanting 16 rounds, I'd like all my disciples to do 2 things: stay in ISKCON and cooperate with the temple authorities. And he says, if your tea priest says something wrong, then I apologize. And there was a question also about danger, that we want to avoid danger. So how do we distinguish? Because sometimes aversion to danger could be seen as an anartha, a potential anartha. So how do you discriminate between danger, which is justifiable?
Depends what you mean by danger, though. What are you thinking in terms of danger?
Well, I was thinking there was one personality that didn't want to take a position of being a spiritual master because he thought it was too dangerous to be in that position. And there may be a lot of devotees that are like that. And so if only a few do it, then it's even more dangerous for them. But if more did do it, it would be less dangerous because more devotees would be getting better guidance.
Good point. And there is certainly some senior devotees thinking along that way, because Prabhupada wanted all his disciples to become spiritual masters. And he didn't limit that to only certain groups of devotees. He was saying that the bona fide disciple now becomes bona fide spiritual master later. Of course, he appointed some to begin with, because they were leaders, leading devotees. But as the movement gets bigger and bigger, the movement is a lot bigger than it was back then. So there's certainly a need, and if devotees don't take up that responsibility, then it is going to be less devotees taking on more weight, which is could pose problems as well. It's interesting because I heard one devotee criticizing his godbrother, who was a spiritual master, and I thought it was incorrect. He did so, especially to a younger devotee such as myself. And although I didn't find it a place to tell him that this is off, but But when he was criticising, then I decided, I thought, in terms of what Prabhupada says, well, if you think you can, if you don't, he says, rather than criticise, then you do better. So I said to him, well, why don't you become a spiritual master then? But then he kind of palmed that down, you know, as if I wouldn't do that. He said it was quite rough words actually, but he said, you know, I wouldn't do that. As if, you know, he was above that by not doing that service. He said, didn't Prabhupada want all his disciples to become spiritual masters. So basically what it is sour grapes. Can't qualify themselves enough, envious of someone who is qualified and who's taken on that service and who's taken a great risk of taking so many other people's karma. And they may have some imperfections, they may have some difficulties according to material vision, but that's not what we should be focused on according to Native instruction. You've done a great service for taking a great responsibility for the pleasure of the spiritual master. And then somebody who can't qualify themselves, who doesn't have a great reputation, is criticising. And such criticism is also what makes these individuals unable to follow strictly, because the result of criticising elevated devotees is that material desires come up. You lose your taste for Krishna consciousness. And so the better thing would be, well, if you think the person is not doing a good job of it, then show how to do it. You do it better, and show them, and then perhaps they'll say, oh, you're doing a good job, and I'll follow you.
Yeah, I was thinking as well, if the initial anartha is trying to avoid danger, and so they will do it, then by criticising the extra purposes in the more dangerous position, because Krishna says in the Gita, if somebody makes a mistake and he carries on, he's Satan, but if you deride him, then you're in a more kind of difficult, potentially very difficult situation than the person who's maybe had. Because the spotlight's on everyone's looking at every move he makes, so they're not looking at you. But Krishna's looking at you, he's not looking at him. He's looking at you because you're criticizing him.
And we're forgetting that perhaps Krishna put him there. Krishna put that person there, and he knows what he's like. If Krishna didn't want the person, if we forget that not a blade of grass moves without Krishna's consent, never thinking this is happening without Krishna's consent. And also, it does mention in Shastra that, I think it was Chaitanya Charitamrita actually, Prabhupada, I guess in one of the purports, he says that men who are like hogs and dogs criticise this Krishna conscious movement. So that criticism may be from outside the movement, it may be from inside the movement, but it says that the devotees of the Krishna conscious movement will continue take so many risks to push forward this Krishna conscious movement. So Prabhupada is saying that we are taking a risk, but Prabhupada took a risk by coming to the West. He knew that by putting a lot of weight on his young devotees, because those devotees were much younger than we are now, and they were getting colossal amount of weight put on them. They had a tough act to follow. All they knew was Prabhupada, and they were thinking they had to be like that. And it was, looking back on it, you know, you could see that they were shooting for the moon, where they were, many of them maybe not of, no offence, but some of them didn't quite last it. But they took risks to spread the Krishna consciousness movement, and they did spread it. Okay, there's maybe some fallout because of some of the fall down, but at the same time, had there not been the risk that they took, then the Krishna consciousness movement would not have reached many of us. So we have to be thankful that they took that risk. Just like in a battle, what was it called that when?
Battlefield Commission.
Battlefield Commission. So someone may not be necessarily qualified to be a colonel or a sergeant or whatever, but the sergeant has just been, there's no sergeant there, so they have to put someone in charge. And then people say, oh, I'm not going to follow him. And everyone's going to make their own mind up. And then everybody's just, there's no cohesion, there's no force. And Prabhupada said, better a blind uncle than no uncle. And it's actually by the disciples' faithful following of the spiritual master who is authorized, that is how they're making advancement. Krishna's in your heart. And also, I can't remember, I found this passage once, I read it in Spiritual Master and Disciple book, compilation of quotes from Prabhupada's books, and it says that even sometimes the God Brother will not see his God Brother as Spiritual Master, but the Krishna imbibes the disciple with faith to see the Spiritual Master in the way that God Brother would. So this indicates that if we have faith in Krishna and we're trying to do the right thing, then we just do what Krishna says and he'll look after us. Yeah, so whatever we're doing is a risk. We could say, oh, perhaps I won't take initiation because I might fall down. And well, you wouldn't be the first, and you wouldn't be the last either. But it's not the end of the world. No, it's not to minimize it. You want to make a vow and take a vow, then a vow means we shouldn't break it. Prabhupada says it's a gentleman's agreement, or a gentlewoman's agreement, or ladies' agreement, whatever that is. It should be promised to the spiritual masters, like a promise we should make, which is like no other promise we've ever made. And therefore, the waiting time prior to get initiation is there to see, can you handle it? Can you work with this? Can you work like that? And then you show some signs. And Prabhupada says, first initiation is to give them a chance, and then second initiation is no turning back. I would say it depends on the individual how serious they take the initiation as to how much strong connection is going to be there with the spiritual master. The more serious we take the words of the spiritual master, the stronger that connection. And Prabhupada says that the words of the spiritual master should be non-different from the disciples' very being, or it should be our life and soul. And the spiritual master says something, then we don't think there's any option but to follow what he says. So therefore we have to, when we're looking for a spiritual master, we have to understand, hear the lectures of the different spiritual masters. I think, okay, do I have enough faith in his personality that whatever he says, I'm prepared to follow, knowing that that person knows what's best for me more than I know. And thankfully, there are many wonderful devotees in ISKCON who are in that stage where we can have faith that they know what's better for us more than we do. And all it takes is listening to them for 5 minutes and you just feel elevated already. So once again, if anyone feels some danger in the Q world, listen to Srila Prabhupada's lectures, listen to other spiritual masters' lectures, listen to Kirtan. Kirtan is the safest place in the universe, Prabhupada said, so therefore just always keep Krishna consciousness in our mind through hearing, chanting, and associating with devotees. And then there is no danger. And even if accidentally some danger happens inadvertently, then we simply just absorb more in Krishna consciousness. Anything else? Let's go to the key.
Jai.
Shri Prabhupada ki.
Jai.
Shri Prabhupada ki.
Jai. Very good. Shri Prabhupada ki. Jai.